Good morning, everyone. We are starting this webinar with Stephanie Carvajalino. Welcome, Stephanie, on behalf of FIU Cyber and FIU Business. We are so happy to have you. And we will have today a session about how to get grants to fund your small business. And it's going to be an interactive session. We will have questions and answers and opinions also. And Stephanie Carvajalino is a Colombian entrepreneur and leader and writer and educator, which has been doing so many things for the community, both in Colombia and here in Miami. They've, together with her sisters, they founded a school in Weston and so many other schools and initiatives also in Colombia. And she will talk about this empowerment for the entrepreneurs and small business and startups. Welcome, Stephanie. Thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this invitation. I love to talk about this topic. I love to talk, like Luciana said, about entrepreneurship. I'll tell you a little bit about me. I'll tell you a little bit about the topic that we're gonna discuss today, that is all about grants that are not only for nonprofit organizations. So we're gonna bring that other side of grants. But we are going to talk as well about grants for nonprofit organizations. And after that, we have some questions that I would love to, like, any questions that you have, just like type them in el chat. I always do Spanglish also, so if there's like Spanish speaking people, you're gonna see my Spanglish. If you don't understand something that I say, just let me know in the comments as well in the chat that I have right here to be able to answer your questions. So like Luciana said, I own three main businesses. One is schools. We own schools with my sisters. We own schools in Latin America and here in the United States. We also have a corporate training company. So we have an online learning platform, and we have users, more than 100,000 users in 9 different countries. What we do is that we train the teams of big and medium-sized corporations. And my favorite part is that we have a new company, not new, but like a spin-off of BizNation, that it's called BizLab. And with BizLab, what we do is that we implement programs, okay? We implement education programs. So we are implementers of grants. We are implementers of different programs in Latin America and in the United States. So for example, here in the United States, there's something that it's called the U.S. Department of State. And the U.S. Department of State have different organizations that they help, right? So there is one side or one organization that it's called USAID. So USAID. And basically, this organization is in charge of all the international collaboration that the United States does with international organizations and with other countries. Okay, so USAID has multiple grants for multiple organizations around the world to create social impact programs in different areas, right? So that's how we get into knowing this world of grants. We realize that there's organizations that have these programs where they give you a budget for you to implement programs. But in that process, we realize that there's like a huge world around grants, and that these grants, they do not only exist for nonprofit organizations, for example, to create social impact programs, but there are other types of grants, for example, for entrepreneurs. Because at the beginning I thought, and I was like, okay, grants are only for nonprofit organizations to create a social impact. And talking with a lot of people have this perception. The truth is that grants are not only for nonprofit organizations and are not only for social impact programs. And like I like to say it, there's as many colors as there are, there's different types of grants for different types of organizations, with different types of characteristics and stuff like that. So for example, there are grants for business owners. I don't know if you saw during, I think that most of the people started learning about this concept of grants. And let me first say, what is a grant? So a grant is a financial aid that an organization, it could be private or public, give you, but you don't have to pay it back. It's not a loan, okay? You don't have to pay it back. You don't have to pay like monthly payments for the grant. It's money, saying it in like super easy words, it's money that these organizations give you to implement something, okay? So in this case, programs, but for example, if a private company give you a 10,000 grant for your business, it could be for specific stuff. So for example, it could be for inventory. And then with that money, you buy the inventory that you need to grow your business, okay? So like I was saying, there's grants for nonprofits, but there's also grants for small business owners. That is specifically what I want to talk today about. As we all know, being a small entrepreneur and having a small business is not easy, right? It's a big challenge because at the beginning, you have to do everything. And I always like to tell people that to start a business, you don't need money. You can start a business without money. But to grow your business, you do need money. So some ways in which you can get that money, first is through loans, which is great. There's loans, there's different loans. You can apply for those loans, but it's not the only way that you can get money to grow your business. So you also have, for example, something that it's called bootstrapping. I'm not going to talk about bootstrapping today because that's getting too much into like the startup world and like the business side. And the topic today is grants, but you can do bootstrapping. In our case, for the different businesses that I told you that we own today, we have done everything bootstrapped. So we don't have like external investors, but we have also used a lot of grants to grow our businesses. Okay. So like I was saying before, there's a lot of private companies that they have grants for different reasons, for different types of businesses, for different industries. So for example, and I'm going to talk to a little bit more about that later in the conversation. But for example, today there's a grant that Verizon has for small business owners. And what is the first requisite that you need to be able to apply for the grant? You need to be a small business owner. So if you're a nonprofit, you already know that you don't have the main characteristics to apply for this grant. That it's a big mistake that a lot of people take when they are first applying for grants. They just apply for everything without even reading before the main requisites that you need to be able to apply. And then I have seen a lot of people that spend a lot of time filling out applications, and then they read, oh, I'm not a US citizen. Then you cannot apply for the grant. So first we need to know and read what are we eligible for, and then select what we're going to apply for. So in this case, for example, for this grant that Verizon has, they're going to give $1 million in grants, divided in grants of $10,000. You need to be a business owner to be able to apply for this grant. This is a specific case that, like I said, at the end, I'll share more information about this specific case. But there are going to be other grants that are only going to be for minority-owned businesses, or are only going to be for people that are exporting, or are only going to be for people who are in arts, are in like the cultural side. Or you are going to see also grants that are only going to be for women-owned businesses, or grants that are only going to be within education, others that are going to be within climate change, others that are going to be for you to be able to pay your payroll, or like I said before, to get new inventory so you can get bigger contracts. So there's so many different possibilities, and people always ask me, Stephanie, what is the first step for me to get into this world of grants. And the first thing is to understand that there's many options and that you need to have an action plan, like I call it, to do the research, okay? There's a lot of options, there's a lot of money, but the main problem that these organizations have is that usually the people, they don't apply for these grants because they don't know that the grants exist, right? Hello, Jillian.
Hi.
Oh. So we are already here talking about grants. I know that you also know about these topics. So if you want to jump in anything or have any questions or whatever, feel free to do it. As well as all the participants that are here, if you have any questions, feel free to drop your questions in the chat that I have it like open right here, and I'll love to answer those questions.
Yes, sorry, Stephanie, to jump in. And after greeting Jillian, the director of FIU Cyber, I think we can start the interactive part where when we ask the main parts that we want to discuss, as we are also a grant. And then this way, Jillian can say hi to us and we start the questions. Thank you.
Perfect. Well,
Thank you.
Jillian, the floor is yours.
Yeah, hi everyone. I don't know how much Luciana and Stephanie have said. Sorry, I was late. I was in another meeting that was finishing a little bit later. But hello and welcome on behalf of the FIU Center for International Business Education and Research, which is a grant from the U.S. Department of Education with the purpose of promoting U.S. competitiveness in international business. So this is a grant that we apply for every 4 years, and it's currently being housed at 16 different cyber centers throughout the United States. So it's really, this topic is really near and dear to our heart. So we're happy to have Stephanie on board that can talk about all of her experience with working with grants. And, you know, hopefully it can give ideas to some of the attendees on here. And as Stephanie said, please feel free to put your questions in the chat so we can address them.
Perfect.
Yes, we can start with the timing. What's the time expectations we can have when we apply? What's the average of time to wait for a response?
Super important. Most of the answers that I'm gonna give are gonna start with it depends. And I love and hate that answer, but it's the reality. Like with grants, it depends. Because like I was saying, there's so many different types of grants out there. So there's grants of like $10,000. There's grant of like $20,000, $200,000, $500,000, 1 million, 2 million, 5 million. Like there's so many different types of grants. And of course, a grant that it's going to be for 5 million, it's not going to take you the same time to get it than a grant that it's for $10,000, right? So it depends. It depends on the type of grant. But for me, something that I always do when applying for grants, I always ask myself, like, I do like a balance of like cost benefit, like the time that I'm going to invest versus the money that I'm getting and the project that I have to like implement or how I'm going to use that money. So for example, if I'm applying for a $10,000 grant and it takes me like 2 weeks, it's no, like it's the application is super complicated and it takes me like 2 weeks and they ask me for like all this information. Like I'd rather do all that work for a bigger grant than for a $10,000 grant that it's super helpful for your business. Because Jillian, before you came in, we were talking that there's a lot of grants for nonprofits, but usually business owners, we think that grants are only for nonprofits or social projects, but there's also a lot of grants for small business owners that help us grow our businesses. So there's grants like we were saying before to use it for payroll or for inventory or for like, you know, growing the business to have bigger contracts and be able to like increase your revenue, your reach, et cetera, et cetera. So there's not like a specific timing, but I think that it will depend. But my tip of like me feeling a lot of filing like a lot of grants is choose wisely. And that's also like another tip that I can give is, I know, and I always say this, it's like if you apply to more grants, you have more opportunities of like winning one, because it's not like you apply and you're gonna get it, right? It's like you applied, but there's also a lot of people that are applying, so you might get it or you might not get it. But in this case with grants, my recommendation is working smarter, not harder. Like, do a research before, like we were saying before, know if you're eligible, if you're not eligible, if it's helping you in the momentum or in the timing your business that you are, and apply to the ones that you feel confident that you have like a good competitive advantage to get them, and not to like all the grants that are out there.
And also, and what is the general type of business that receive a grant in average, or the grants in which sectors?
So again, it depends. There's so many grants. So like I was saying, there's grants that are very general. So the one that I told you about Verizon, it's very general. It's just like small business. Like you have to be a small business. And in the United States, like 99% of the businesses are small and medium enterprises, like are considered small and medium enterprises. So that's like a big scope, right? So for that one, you just have to be a small business. But there are other grants that are more specific. So for example, there are grants that are specifically for companies that are within the export and import like industry, that usually these industries required a lot of like money. So there's grants specifically for these type of companies. Or like I was saying before, that I'm not going to get into that topic in this webinar, but we should definitely do a webinar about that. There are some things that are called certifications, right? So the United States, and I'm going to try to explain this super easy. The United States says that 15% of their budget needs to go to small and medium business owners. Like they need to hire, they need to like buy from small and medium business owners. The goal for 2025 is 15%. And this is gonna sound like how? So that 15% is within like the $1 trillion, right? From the budget of the US, that 15% is within the $1 trillion. So you would say, oh, everyone is fighting, like all the small business owners are fighting for that money, blah, 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 blah. The biggest problem that they have is that they're only in the 12% because they don't have enough businesses ready to like being hired, right? Because you need like some requisites. So in order to do this, they create some certifications to be able to know, oh, you're a minority, you're not, da, da, da. So they have different certifications. If you get those certifications, then it opens the door for you to apply for other type of grants, like for bigger grants. But the certification, there's like a process for that certification. So there's like women-owned business owners, minority-owned business owners, and there's like other certifications that you can get. And like I said, that's another whole topic about like certifications. But my point of like bringing that is that.
And how can we? I'm sorry, Stephanie, I interrupted.
No, I was gonna
That
say that my point of bringing that out is that when you have those certifications, you open the door for other type of grants that before applying, they're gonna say, you need to be minority owned, like certified. Like you could be minority owned, minority owned. But if you're not minority owned certified, don't even fill the application because you don't have the main requisites to be eligible to get the grant.
And what kind of documents do you have to provide in order to apply for the grant? Or I guess maybe each grant should say what you need to provide them with. And
exactly. So each grant has like different requisites. So for example, now that I'm very close to a grant that we're working with Verizon, there's 2 requisites. The first one, you need to be a small business in Florida. The second one, and this is something that I really like because they're working a lot like into the education side, like educating small business owners. You need to take 2 courses, right? 2 courses out of like more than 100 courses that they have in their online portal. And then once you take 2 courses, you're ready to apply for the grant. And I'm going to leave you like the link to apply for that grant. But for example, there are going to be other grants that all the grants before you apply, they're going to tell you, this is what you need minimum to be able to apply. In this one, you don't need to be certified as a minority business owned company. You just need to be a company registered that operates in Florida. So each grant has like different requisites, but they're always gonna say it before, and you always need to read it before you use all your time applying, and then be like, oh, I'm not eligible, and I already filled out everything. That happened to me once, that I filled out a super big grant. It took me a long time, and then at the end it was like, oh, and this is only for US citizens. And I was like, no, all my work. So I learned from that, and I'm telling you today so it doesn't happen to you.
But in just a question, in that case, you can have another person with you, like a team. When if you're not a citizen, you have a citizen next to you, for example, and you
There's
fill
some,
in the name of two person
yes, there are
people.
some cases that you can do it, that they will ask you, like I said, like there's, each grant will have its own requirements. Most of them are like standardized. This is another tip that I will give you. Once you apply to one grant, go immediately to Google Drive, create a document, and put all the answers there. Because most of the grants are gonna ask you very similar questions, right? So you don't wanna write them all over again once and like every time that you apply. So all the grants that I apply, I have them in a Google Drive, and I have all the answers there, and I just like copy paste, copy paste, copy paste. And now with artificial intelligence, woof, it's way better. You go to ChatGPT, you create a GPT, you put all the information in of like your organization, and then you put the information of the grant, and it does everything. And we can also do a webinar of how to use AI for these like grant application processes and how to be like more effective and everything. But that's what I do to save time when I'm applying like for grants.
Also, I think we have some people who are on the session that are looking into starting their own business, or they have like an entrepreneurial mindset. Do you know of specific grants that are available maybe for new businesses for these people that are interested in starting, but they don't really know where to start?
Yes, usually what I have seen, this is not the norm or the rule, but usually what I have seen is that the grants for businesses that are starting are going to be usually smaller. So they're going to be like 5,000, 10,000, but like when you're starting a business and they give you 5,000 that you don't have to pay, oh my God, that's an amazing deal. Okay, been there, done that. And they're not only grants, but for example, when I'm starting a business, when I started my business, and all the people that I talk to that are starting business, I always recommend them to participate in like pitch competitions. Why? Because it gives you two great things. One, if you win, usually these pitch competitions, the prices are like $2,000, $5,000. There's some that are like a lot of money. Like Emerge Americas is like $500,000, but of course it's not for a business that it's starting. But once you do like this type of pitch competitions, if you win, you get the money. But also it's a great practice to validate your product, to understand like always the process, like the judges ask you like really good questions for you to like actually have like your business and your project ready, or like to how are you going to use that money to start your business.
Okay, we have a question from Rosanna. How long do you need to have your company created when you apply? If there's a minimum of time between the moment you create the company and the moment you ask for a grant?
Okay, so I'm gonna answer this question in two ways. So for the program that we are doing with Verizon, for example, it doesn't ask you for specific time. Like if you go to, let me put a link here. If you go to this link right here, if you go to this link right here, and you have a business, you can apply link Verizon grant. You can apply for a grant, and you could have 2 years in business, or you could have 1 week in business. The important thing is that you have a business, right? Because they're going to ask you for your mission, your vision, like what your business does and stuff like that when you apply. But again, there are going to be other grants that are going to tell you you need to have minimum 3 years operating. So if you don't have 3 years operating, then you don't apply for that grant. That's why reading, it's very important to make your life easier. Again, so it doesn't happen like it happened to me, that it took me a long time filling a grant, and then I was like, oh, I'm not a US citizen. And I wasn't able to like finish that one. So for this one specifically, that is like a $10,000 grant for small businesses in Florida. There's not a specific time of operation, but you're gonna find other grants that are gonna be like, you need at least 3 years of operations.
I see a question from Rafael, and he says, which grants are for cultural projects? So you may have a specific example.
Here's 2 tips that I'm gonna give you. First thing, Google is your best friend forever and ever. So if you go to Google and you put in Google, grants for cultural projects in Florida, you will find like a whole list of like grants for cultural projects. If you go, again, talking about AI, if you go to ChatGPT and you find in Google, it showed you like 3 grants. Like, for example, it says like Knight Foundation that have like specific stuff for cultural projects, or Mellon Foundation that have for specific like cultural projects. You take those 2 and you can go to ChatGPT and be like, hello, ChatGPT. I always say hello just in case, you never know. So hello, ChatGPT. Please, I'm creating a list to apply for grants for my cultural project that does this, and this. Create me a list of 10 different organizations that are similar to these ones that I'm gonna put here. And then it creates you a list of those organizations, and then you go to Google and you specifically look for those grants. So the good thing about grants is that since it's a money that they're giving you, everything have to be super transparent. So everything is online, like all the requirements are online, everything is out there, but you need to look for them, because grants are not always gonna be like, hey, like for example, like this webinar, like, hey, there's a grant for Verizon. Like that usually doesn't happen. Like they just put it in their website and then nobody knows and then nobody applies. And that's the problem, that the money is there, but people are not applying for the money.
It's the same, Stephanie, that with scholarships. Scholarships in the States are everywhere for everyone, but nobody knows.
Yes, like for example, we are doing a project with Coca-Cola, and Coca-Cola within like the areas that they impact with their foundation, there's one that's specifically about like scholarships. Like they give scholarships all the time, and they were saying like we should have like thousands of people applying, but there's not like thousands of people applying because people think that their things are just gonna be like, hey, here, apply for the scholarship. But there's so many scholarships, there's so many grants, everything is online.
Yeah, even with our grant, within our grant, we have scholarships for students to do internships and study abroad. And we don't get as many applications as we feel like we normally would. Maybe people don't apply because they're like, oh, I'm sure I won't get it, but I think it's worth trying. Even with the grants, it's worth trying because they could just say no, and then you're in the same space that you're in before. But
yes, 100%.
at least
This happened to me. So we're helping like, so I met the people from Verizon and they were like, oh, we have this grant for small business owners. But then I'm obsessed with helping the Hispanic community. So I was like, no, what do you mean small business owners? Like, what are we doing to get to the Hispanic community? Like, at least in the US, the word grant is something that people have heard before or are used to it. In like Spanish and within the Hispanic community, in our culture, we're just raised of like, nobody's gonna give you money just because. So people, the main reason why people, they don't apply for these type of opportunities is because they think it's a scam. They think it's sometime they're gonna have to pay it back. Like they're scared. That's the first one. And the second reason why a lot of people don't apply for grants is because, like I said before, since you're not 100% secure that you're gonna get it, they're like, I'm gonna invest 30 minutes, but I'm not gonna get it. And what I say, it's, okay, you invest 30 minutes and you have 50-50 chances of getting it. But if you don't apply, you have 100 chances of not getting it. So at least your odds are better once you apply. So if you don't get one, perfect. There's going to be another and another and another, and you're going to have like those chances of getting it. So if you ever have that mindset of, yes, but I'm not going to get it, just think if you don't apply, you're not going to get it still. So if you apply, maybe you will get it. And also, there's a lot of people that think that grant applications are very complicated. Some are, not all of them, some are, but I have good news. For businesses are usually easier. Like the grants for nonprofits, like government grants and big grants and stuff like that, are usually more complicated. But like for businesses, since you have like very specific needs, they're very like for specific stuff, are usually easier to get. And another good news is that there's a lot of organizations that help you to apply for free. Like for example, us within like Biz Lab, all these people that want to apply for like the Verizon grant, if they have like any questions, we are there to help them. Like, this is what you have to do. This is what you have to put here. Like helping in that like technical assistance. But like us, there's like many organizations that are there helping the people that are applying. So if you don't apply because you think the application is too complicated, first, usually they're not that complicated. And second, there's a lot of organizations that are willing to help you in that process.
And then we also have a question, which is kind of similar to the one that you addressed, but maybe you can expand on it, from Majid. And he says, is there any kind of grant for a to start a business? To like, if you've not had a business before and you're starting a business from scratch, are there grants for this that you know of?
All right, so one that I have like from the top of my head, not, but like I said, the good thing about grants also, there's two good things about grants. Usually, if one grant works, they will do it multiple times. Like for example, Verizon started this grant for small business owners when COVID hit. And they did it because all the small business owners were having like a super hard time. So they did it to help the small business owners because of COVID. But since it worked and it actually helped businesses, they were like, you know what? Let's do this until, and they have like a goal until 2030. Okay. So they have that grant from multiple years. So that's good because you know that if you didn't get it this year, you'll probably get it next year. Or if you miss the deadline this year, they're probably going to have it like next year. And another good thing about grants is that there are always new grants. So it's not like, oh, there's these 5 that are the ones that are always, and I already applied for those 5, so I'm not gonna get, no, there's always new grants, right? So go to Google, but you have to do the research. And that's why what I said at the beginning, that I always tell people, the main tip that I can give to anyone to get into the grant world is to do the research. Like all the other stuff is like technical stuff and you will learn how to do it and stuff like that. But if you don't understand that you have to put in the work in like the investigation side of like looking for them, then you're never gonna actually get the good side of grants. Like if you only apply for one, no. If you apply for one, apply for multiple. And also to add into what I said before, for new startups, there's not only grants, but there's also a lot of accelerator programs. Not because before I only said pitch competitions, which are good, but there's also a lot of accelerator programs, which are like even better because like, for example, there's one for Venture Miami. And then Venture Miami, what they do is that they take all these businesses and they have a program like for 2 months or something like that. And then they help you work on the business and since you're starting, and then they do a pitch competition and then you use that money for the work that you did within the program. So you can also Google accelerator programs. And also, just like the grants could be very specific for industry, the accelerator programs as well. So you're into culture and like art and stuff like that. There are accelerator programs specifically for businesses within that industry. Like they have an expertise in that industry. And if you're already going to join an accelerator program, my recommendation is look for the best in your industry, not just like a general accelerator. Perfect. I don't know if there are like any other questions. I don't know if Luciana, you have another questions or there are like any other questions, Gio, or in the chat. And I would
Yes.
love to share about like specific grant, for example, that we're working on now.
Yes, we have Rafael Suarez, Nacho, who has a question. He has a company of e-learning, and he wants to know if for e-learning, does it ring the bell to you that specifically from Verizon or another one, it can be specifically beneficial when you have e-learning companies?
Yes, so there's grants specifically for e-learning. So there's different like needs. So for example, when you have an e-learning company, there's different needs. Like you could use grants for getting like creating content. This is something that we did before, and something that you could do, for example, with this Verizon grant, is that if you get $10,000, you could say, okay, I'm gonna buy cameras, lights, backing, backdrops, and like to create a studio. And that's the reason of the grants. Like to grow your e-learning, probably you need more content. But right now, creating content is very expensive and you don't have like the inventory or like the tools to do it. And then you can use that money to have the right tools, create more content, grow your company. Or it could be more of like, I need a developer. For example, I'm going to tell you our story. Our story is not with the grant, but it's also with like innovative ways of like funding your company. So with my sisters, we gave a lot of like speaking engagements. So we were invited to Dominican Republic to operate a lot of entrepreneurship programs in vulnerable communities. Basically, we had to give like speaking engagements like in all the little towns in Dominican Republic. And the money that we got from that contract, we used it to pay for our first MVP of our platform, right? And that's how we started. And then we participated in a pitch competition, and then we used that money to pay for like the developer that we needed to like better the platform, blah, 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 blah. So that's how we did it. But a good way of doing it for you, for example, could be for apply for these type of grants and then use that money. But I always say, before you get the money, you need to know in what are you going to use it. Because if not, like $10,000 could be a lot or it could be like nothing if you don't know how are you going to use it.
I have a question that ties in with another question that's here in the chat. So so if someone is interested in a grant, how can they find someone who, you mentioned that there were people that could help you with the process. And then we have Gabriella, who says that, I'll read her question here. So she wants to register her company on biz.com. And also she'd like to apply for grants for her radio show, which is dedicated to music. And she's wondering if you can guide her or if you can point her in the direction maybe of someone who would guide her to apply for these things.
Perfect. So here I'm going to leave you the information of Juliet. She's from our team. And she's helping in all these like projects that we have like related to grants. But organizations that usually will help you with this kind of stuff are like chambers of commerce. So chambers of commerce will usually, there's so many chambers of commerce. Like in Colombia, I'm from Colombia. In Colombia, it works differently. Each city has one chamber of commerce, and by law, you need to register your company in the chamber of commerce, in that one chamber of commerce. Here in the US, it's different. There's so many chambers of commerce. So you have the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, the Ecuadorian Chamber of Commerce, the Puerto Rican Chamber of Commerce, the Colombian American Chamber of Commerce, the Colombian Chamber of Commerce. There's so many of these organizations that their goal is to help businesses grow. So usually they will have something that it's called technical assistance. And usually it's for free. Guess why? Because they receive a grant from someone to help you. That makes sense? So that's why usually these organizations have like all these help for free for small business owners. So a good way here, where it's our contact, and you can like ask all the information. I will send you all the links. Also follow us in, well, usually most of the information is in Spanish. We're gonna start doing more Spanglish, but you can follow us in our Instagram is @Hermanas Carvajalino. So I'm gonna put it here, Hermanas Carvajalino. And there we are usually posting this type of like information. So today we are sharing the grant of, because we said like, since people are not going and look for this information, we are gonna look for the information and bring it to you in an easy way. So today we are sharing the Verizon for the grant, the Verizon grant. But then in a month, it's going to be another one. And then in another month, it's going to be another one. And it's just like trying to get people into like, oh, this exists, and get more information about it.
And aside from doing ChatGPT or Googling available grants, is there a website or something that you could recommend where people can find information about available grants?
Yes. For example, go to miamifoundation.com. In miamifoundation.com, so there's a difference, and I'm not going to get into that, like foundations, what is a foundation, what is a nonprofit, what is a 501c3, 501c6, whatever, that there's like a whole world. But there are some organizations that they receive a lot of money, but they cannot implement all that money. So what they do is that they create these smaller grants and they give it to different organizations. So Miami Foundation, it's great because they have like so many organizations. So if you're into culture, they will have something for culture. If you're into business or tech, they will have something for tech. If you're into X, Y, or Z, they will have something. So Miami Foundation is a great website to go to have like a more curated option. There's another one organization that it's called Urban Impact Lab. And it's great too, because they also have a lot of information about like grants, about like these type of programs. I met them. Another way also, it's going to events. Go to events, like go from the online to the offline, because sometimes there's a lot of people that apply for grants, but when you go to events like nonprofit events, foundation events, and this type of stuff, people will guide you and they will tell you, like there's the project managers, they will tell you, you will win this thing because you have this, or this, or they will tell you, no, not even like, don't even try, like you don't have what it takes because this organization only works with organizations that have worked before. I don't know, but like going to events, it's also a great resource. Like going to this type of also like either virtual or in-person events and ask this type of questions, they're great because people will point you out on like best practices and best ways on how they have done it before.
Excellent. Roxana wrote, she's asking if she obtains a $5,000 grant and her project needs more money, can she apply to another one, or is it better to apply to one that fits with her necessities?
Good question. If the $5,000 grant is easy to apply for that one, and then you apply for another one. Like you don't need to pick, is either this one or this one. Like they're not gonna tell you, oh, because you already applied for this one, you cannot apply for this one. Whoa. There will be some grants that they will be like, have you received funding before from a grant? But they will ask you, and if you have, then you know that you're not eligible for that specific grant. But usually, in a lot of grants that I have like done, they're not like, they don't have like that, they don't ask that question. So I would just apply for, if the 5,000 like work, use it. And also super important, businesses are different than nonprofits. Like nonprofits, they have a person that is in charge of just like looking for grants because they live most of the times from grants and donations and stuff like that. But businesses not. Businesses, you have to be sustainable and you have to generate revenue. So your business could not depend on grants because you don't have 100% of possibilities that you're gonna get your grant, that you're gonna get that grant. So your business cannot depend on whether you get it or you don't get it. So when you have a business and you apply for grants, it's for more specific stuff. Like you need a bump in this, you need help in this, you need you have a new super client that it's super big and you're not able to like provide all the things that you need to provide, so you apply for a specific grant. So for businesses, it's more for like specific stuff and not like, oh, my business is gonna depend on grants, because it's not scalable, it's not smart, it doesn't make sense.
Can you give an example of a business that received a grant and then how it helped them? What did they do with it?
Yes, I can give you my example. So we receive a lot of grants. So for example, we have a grant. Well, I'm going to tell you that, and then I'm going to tell you another one. So for us, for example, we got a grant from USAID, the US Department of State, for 5 years, and we operate programs in 5 different countries in Latin America, right? So before that, we have never applied for a grant. This grant, we got it like 3 years ago, and it was the first grant that we got. But that grant opened our mind to a new business that is BizLab, that it's an operating and an implementer organization. Before that, we never knew about like that existed, or that we even were good at it. So in our case, that was amazing. We had that grant, it's 5 years. And from that, we created like a whole business that today implements programs for private and public organizations. And then another example that I can give, well, most of like I said, this Verizon grant, they started in COVID. So they have like a lot of testimonials of the people that got it the years before and what they have done with that money and how they have grown. And they have like in their website, they have like the testimonials of the people that won it before and what they have done. Pero sí, like that I can think from the top of my head, those two.
So Rafael, he has a project, and his project involves multiple cities and multiple countries, kind of like your program as well. And so he records with traditional bands, and they have live sessions, and so they're not always in the United States. So he's curious as to if usually grants require that you only do things in the United States. I would imagine that, like, if it's from the US government or maybe USAID. Oh no, not even, I don't know. I mean, he wants to know if they require that it's only in the US, or if he could.
It depends. Like it depends. Like the grant, for example, it says if my project, I'm going for some countries and cities to record traditional bands in live sessions outside, but like the impact, this is a business, right? It's not a nonprofit. So if the impact, like for example, let's say these bands that you're going to record, you sell those recordings or something like here in the US, you can say like, I'm using this money, like I gave the example of the e-learning platform. Like I'm using this money to create content because content is the main like raw material for my business. So in your case, this content of these recordings is the raw material for your business, then I think it will like, there will be no problem. So it depends. You will have to ask, but I think that for that, if it's like a business scenario, there will be no problem. That's different than implementing programs in other countries. So in our case, we get the money because the organization is the International Cooperation Office. Like the point is that the programs cannot, like for example, USA, they don't give money for projects in the US or Puerto Rico. Like if your project is in the US or Puerto Rico, they don't give you the money. It's only for projects that are implemented abroad. So again, each organization will have like their own requisites and like requirements.
And I would think that probably when you're applying, it may say that this is criteria for applying, that you must be doing things for, yeah. I mean, definitely an argument could be made, like you were mentioning, that about the impact of the recordings that he's doing.
And also there's always like spaces for questions. Also always, all these grants at the end, they're gonna give you an email of someone that could answer your questions. Always. You're never gonna see a grant like, oh, apply for the grant and like good luck. No. All the grants are always gonna be like da 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 da. And if you have any question with support, da 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 da, email us at this email. And they have people that are in charge of answering those questions. So you can always ask. Instead of like saying like, oh, I don't think, no, ask.
I was going to say that for us in our grant, we have seen how important it is to do what you promise to do when you are granted, no? When
Yeah.
when you are enjoying
Super
a grant, you do absolutely what you offer step by step, and you need to report it.
That's super
If
important.
you want to have another grant is of that type or another one, because it's part of who you are, the grants you obtain, right?
Super important, like the reports are super important, but then here, this is the good side or bad side, however you want to see it. For nonprofits, it's way harder, like the reporting, and I did this and this and this and this, because it's a non-for-profit business, right? A business, not organization. So the government grants and nonprofit grants are usually more like, como, like in the detail. But for businesses, it's usually easier. Like for traditional businesses, like businesses that generate revenue, is usually easier because the grants are usually smaller, because they're more, usually smaller. No, they have all kinds. They have from 1 million to 200,000 to 10,000. But if you're starting, like if it's the first time that you ever like apply for a grant, my recommendation is don't go for the 5 million. Go for the 10,000, go for the 20,000. Like I said, Miami Foundation has a lot of like 50,000 and stuff like that. I will start with those small ones that the requirements are way easier, and then I will go to the bigger ones. And the bigger ones, of course, the reporting side is the most important part. Like for us, that we apply, like that we operate like big grants, we are obsessed with data, reports, like I like to call it over communication. Like we say everything that we're doing before we're even asked.
And Nahu Pacheco is sending information on your behalf. So I don't know, she needs to put the information also in English, because we have some people here that doesn't speak Spanish. But it's important to know if she can support, or is Juliet from BizNation or from Verizon.
So I'm gonna share a QR code and a link that you can scan. Here, let me share my screen. So here, for the grant for Verizon, you can scan this QR code, or you can go to this link right here that I will put in the chat as well. Let me put it in the chat as well. Here, give me 1 second. Copy link. Okay. So here's the link. If the QR doesn't work, here's the link. If you go to that link, it will take you to the Verizon website. You just register there, put the name of your company, put your zip code. It has to be in Miami or like Florida. And then it has like different courses. And this is a good thing that I was talking about this before. They have 100 courses. We recommend these two. It only takes you like 12 minutes each. So having the possibility of winning $10,000 for your business, and you only have to invest 30 minutes of your time, it's worth it 100%. So we recommend these two, but the good thing is like they have more. So for example, there's something that it's called SBA, the Small Business Administration. They have loans for small business owners. There's a course, I didn't put it here, but there's like a really good course that I watched before that is just on like how to apply for SBA loans if you're a small business and you haven't applied before. There's another course that I thought it was super, super cool as well, that it says, how do I know how much to pay myself in my small business owner, in my small business? Like when you have a small business, you never think about paying yourself. You think about paying everything. But this course is like, no, you have to pay yourself. And here we're going to teach you what do you need to take into account to know how much do you need to pay yourself. So I recommend these two, and you need to take two to be able to apply for the grant. But if you want to take more, like you can take more, like there's no problem. And you can take more, which is that what works. And once you finish the two, then you get this unlocked, and you are able to apply for the grant. If you have any questions, Stephanie, this is not working, it doesn't open, blah, 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 then here is Juliet's email or phone number, like WhatsApp number, and we will answer all your questions, help you in the process. And like I said, this is Verizon right now. This is this opportunity. But there's more. Like, don't only get like this is the only, no, this is one. But the point of this webinar is for you to open your mind to know that there's so many different opportunities out there that you can apply for to finance your business to be able to grow. Perfect.
I don't know if we have more questions regarding
Let
the
me take a
links.
look. Yeah, let me just take a look too. Oh, maybe one quick question to kind of close everything out because we're nearing the end. So let's say you do all of these things, you do the application, and great news, you received the grant. Then what do you do? And also, is it a requirement in any grants that you've been familiar with that you have to repay the grant at any point?
I have heard, but for all the grants that I have applied and that I have seen, I have never seen that you have to like repay that grant. Like never, never, ever. I have never seen it. Or for the ones that I have applied, I have never seen it. Good questions. What do you do after you get the grant? Again, my favorite love-hate answer, it depends. Some grants will be like, okay, here you got the grant, they will contact you, you get the grant, and probably they will contact you like a year after to see if it helped you or if it didn't help you. Other grants will show you like, okay, when you apply, usually they will ask you, how are you going to use the money? And you have to give like a plan. Oh, I'm going to use it in this, and that. And usually they're going to ask you for reports. Okay, you say that you were going to use it in this way. So you have to upload. Usually they have like platforms. Everything, thanks God, today it's online. So not everything, but most of these things are online. So they will ask you to upload like the evidence of, okay, I said that I was going to use 1,000 here. This is how I use it. I said that I was going to, this is how I use it. And like Luciana was saying, you have to show how you're using like the funds. Because at the end of the day, all these grants have an objective. So if the objective is for you to grow your business, the point is that you use that money to grow your business. If the objective is to implement a program and teach 200 kids about financial education, you have to prove that you taught 200 kids about financial education. So it will depend on the criteria of the grant.
This has been really great information that you've shared. And Luciana, did you have any other questions? I think Gabby said she's so grateful to have been here today and learned from you.
Yes, that all the media we generate while we have the grant is an evidence, right? The flyers and the exposure on the media. So then we can collect and gather all the information to prove those are the pics, those are the flyers. That day we were there. This other day we were in another place. This is the recording we did. This is the camera, the picture of the camera we bought. Now we need to, like detectives, to collect evidences once
Collect
we get it,
evidence,
right?
yes. 100%.
Yeah, and I was going to say, with that being said, we recorded the session so we can share it with everybody who's on, and feel free to share with others.
See, that's the most important part. Share this information. Don't stay with that information. For me, my main goal is that people, the most people that I can know that this exists, so they can apply. Because the biggest problem, like I'm saying, is that there's a lot of money out there, but people, like I just mentioned, like for example, I'm gonna give you a short example, and just to like that will be the last thing. We have some projects in Puerto Rico. And Puerto Rico is having a problem that they have to return the money because they're getting help, like money to help like small business and stuff like that. But people are not requesting the money because they don't know about it. Or like I said with the government, their goal is that 15% of their money is used in small business owners, and they're only in 12%, because it sounds like, oh, only 12%. But again, we're talking about like trillions of dollars, like trillions with like T, not B, not M, like T. Like that 15% is trillions of dollars. But people are not using the money because they don't know about it. So now that you know, please use it and share it with other people as well.
We'd also love to hear success stories of you guys applying for the grant and getting it, and
Yes,
that'll be
please.
exciting.
If you apply, please, 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 please. Once you take the courses, like send an email to Juliet, because we are trying to like keep in touch with everyone to see if someone's like get it, like help them and like be there, and like please stay in contact with Juliet here with this information, so we can like help you in whatever you need.
And thank you so much, Stephanie and Luciana. It's always great to, and Stephanie, it's always a pleasure to work with you. You have so much knowledge on so many different topics. So
No,
maybe
thank
we
you
will
for
have,
inviting me. We have to do more webinars about certifications, about AI, about so many things.
I love it. We'll do it for sure.
Love
yes,
it.
at
Thank
the end
you.
of the summer, let's do another one. Let's
Sounds good.
stay
Stay
tuned.
tuned, everyone. All
Stay tuned. Bye.
right, bye. Have a
you.
great day.
You
Thanks
too.
everyone for coming.